Welcome to this edition of Morgan the Asked For podcast. Wednesday night about 9 o'clock. Back to our regular schedule. We are a week and a half out from college football. That matter, and it happens to be one of our teams, my favorite team, the Cyclones, against the K-State Wildcats. It's close, Trev. It's time. We're going to start our predictions. We're going to start tonight with college. We're going to pick the Power Four conference champion, and then our playoff. Okay, we've got the entire bracket. Both of us have our own. And then next week, we will pick game by game Iowa State for sure. And then we'll talk this week. We might do a couple other teams just that are relevant and, nationally relevant, and also maybe some local other teams that do matter, something like a Nebraska or an Illinois, teams that are intriguing, but not really right here. But we'll talk about that this week, Trev, and we'll say that out. We'll save that. But champions, and just a reminder, and Trevor, make sure I'm right with this. I believe it is the same format as last year. The top four ranked conference champions get a bye still for this coming year. Going forward, I think that is going to change, but I believe this current year it stayed the same, correct? Or am I wrong in that?
I actually looked. I thought they changed it, but maybe I'm wrong. We'd have to double check on that.
Maybe they changed that and they didn't change to go to 16. I forget.
Because I double checked on that earlier, and I think it's for the 25 season, the new format. The top four conference champions receive a first-round bye.
Right.
Is that what you had then? Okay.
Yeah, so that's the same. That would be the same as last year.
Okay, gotcha. So I must have misread that then. But anyway, we've talked about it before. They probably need to change that, which I think they're going to do here eventually.
Yes, I think going into the next year is going to change, and then it's just a matter of time before it goes to 16 and the next thing. But I think what's happened is they have to get unanimous approval, and they couldn't get it for the 16-team playoff until next year. Next year, I believe they don't need unanimous approval. And
automatic bids, but not necessarily automatic buys.
Right. Is that for this year or for next year?
For 25 through 26, that would be this year.
Okay, so mine are going to be a little bit off then. I might make a couple changes here real quick because I did the same format as last year. So the automatic bids, and I know that's the argument. We're kind of getting a little off base here, but that's the big argument is the Big Ten and the SEC kind of want 4 automatics. The Big 12 would get 2, ACC get 2, and then 4 and 4 for the Big Ten and SEC, and then, one group of 5, and then the rest at large. The ACC and others don't want to give up the 4 automatic bids, give up half the playoff just because of the conference. Now, in reality, I believe that Iowa State and the Big 12 would benefit by getting 2 automatics, but it's one of those you just don't want to flat out tell the SEC and the Big Ten that you're twice as good as us. That's the hiccup.
Yeah, for the Big 12 and the ACC, you would definitely like to get 2 in each. And if they expand, that's probably what's going to happen. 4-4, 2-2, plus the Notre Dame, as we know, they're always going to be in the mix. And then the group of 5 winner, whoever that is, or the highest ranked group of 5, I should say, typically a Boise State or a team like that. But it sounds like they're going to change it up this year, which they probably should. Last year was the first year that they did it. Everybody was kind of in agreement that some changes need to be made. So it sounds like that's happening. And I do think this thing is going to expand eventually. But I do know that we're still at 12, though, for this coming season.
Yes. Yeah. And that is – sorry, I'm making just a couple changes here on mine.
Oh, you're good. You're good. We're going to go through the 4 major conference championship winners. Then what Morgan and I will do, we'll seed this 1 through 12. Probably go through the top 4 seeds first, and then we'll talk about the first round matchups, which of course are home games, which I love. I think that's awesome for college football.
Right.
The 4 teams that are a little bit lower seeded that don't get the buys, they do get the advantage of a home game, get that extra money, all that type of stuff, get the TV attention. It's just great for any of the 4 teams that get those home games to start off the playoff.
Yes. Yeah. The more, and it's not going to happen, but the more games that are on college campuses, the better. It needs to go one more round. Like the buys need to happen, at home playoff games, because you think about last year, Oregon, they were the number 1 team in the country, the number 1 seed. They had beat Ohio State in the regular season, earned a bye, had to play Ohio State in the Rose Bowl, and got beat. They really didn't get any advantage. Penn State got to play a home game and then got to play Boise State in, I believe, the Fiesta Bowl or the Orange Bowl. I can't remember which one, but it wasn't very close for any of the teams. That would have been a real coup. If Penn State would have had to go to Boise State, it would have been a lot different game, I believe. Maybe not, because talent does win most games, but if Boise State could have had a home game, that would have been a lot different.
Yeah, and like I said, they're probably going to expand on this. I don't know what the exact number they're going to come up with. You and I have talked before. They've talked about 14 or some other different numbers that they're going to come up with here. But yeah, the second round, they're probably going to keep the bowls just because of how much money's involved. But I almost would like to see that second round home games as well for the top 4 seeds. They've kind of earned those those 4 seeds. They should get a home field advantage. But with however much money that the Rose Bowl and Fiesta Bowl and all these others are putting into it, I don't know if that's going to change anytime soon, if ever.
Right. The bowl games are going to have to continue to be a part of it for the foreseeable future. I'm not going to say forever. I do think the Rose Bowl did concede starting at 4:00 or 3:30, whatever they start, which is actually a big step for them, because that was a big thing. They always wanted the first half to be in sunlight and the second half to be after sunset. But I believe they did concede that so they can start at different times now.
Yeah, I think you're right. I saw that a while back. So yeah, the Rose Bowl is giving up a little bit of time, but I think it should still work out pretty well. We'll see how this will be the first year, of course, that's at a different time. We'll see how it works out, but I think it'll be okay.
Yeah, it will be. All right, let's get to it. Let's do our 4 champions first. Okay, and let's just pick our champions and not tell us we won't do the seeding quite yet. But let's go ahead and let's just kind of go alphabetical order here. Okay, so we're going to start with the ACC. I don't have a championship game. When you look at my bracket, you'll see who probably is in that, but that's not a guarantee. They don't have to pick the runner-up, the team that lost, because somehow with the way tiebreakers and everything, there was an argument to be made that like BYU last year was really close to getting into the playoff, and it wasn't Iowa State because they had that extra loss, things like that. And that's happened in the past where teams that didn't play in a championship game got picked for, the BCS games or New Year's Six, whatever you want to call it, against over teams that, lost that game just because their record is better. They went 11-1, and now that other team is 11-2, just for that. So my ACC champion, not going out on a limb at all, and I'm going to pick Clemson.
Same here. I'll give you who they're playing, but I've got Clemson over Louisville. It was a close toss-up between Miami. I went with Louisville just to change things up a little bit, but I have Clemson. I think 99% of college football people will probably have that same pick there.
Yep. I agree there. I just think Dabo he's still not all in on all the changes, but I think he did get enough to help him. And people do forget, they won the ACC last year and got to a playoff. So people do not remember that. So, but they really did. Okay, so now next would be the Big Ten. Again, I'm not going out on a big limb here, but I think there is two teams that stand out against all the others that you definitely could pick. So it'll be interesting to see if you pick the other team. I'm going to go with Ohio State. There are question marks there, but and Ryan Day is not my favorite coach, but I do think he is better than the other team that I think will be right there, and that's James Franklin at Penn State. So I'm going to go Ohio State.
You and I are on the exact same here. I've got Ohio State over Penn State.
Yeah, and it very well, it probably will be Penn State. And you're going to see where I have Penn State and everything. I think Penn State's going to be really, really good. I just think if it comes down to it, Ohio State will beat Penn State in the Big Ten title game. And then let's go to the Big
Penn State. Yeah, they've got trouble beating top 5 teams we know under James Franklin. So I am going to go with Ohio State. Just the brand, everything like that. Ryan Day winning the national title. But I do think those two teams do end up in the Big Ten title this year.
All right, Big 12. I'm going to go with it's not the odds-on favorite, but it's the team that is trying to break college football, and I'm going to go with the Texas Tech Red Raiders. They match the SEC for money. They got all the players. If this works, they have the talent to not only win the Big 12, but then compete in this playoff.
Yeah, Texas Tech has a ton of money. Their alumni, I don't know the guy's name, but anyway, they went 8-5 last year. I believe they spent the most money in the portal, or at least one of the highest spending teams. So I know that's a popular pick. I think they're still 1 year away. I'm going to go with what I know, and that's a rematch of last year's Big 12 championship game. And I am going to take Arizona State over Iowa State. Arizona State returns the most starters of any team in the country, and they've got the quarterback, the receiver, all the linemen are back. The big question for me, though, for Arizona State is, did they lose their heart and soul of the team with Scadaboo? He was such an important part of that team. But they've got, people talk about all the big quarterbacks, Arch Manning, Aller, Nussmeier, some of these other guys. I'm really excited to see Sam Leavitt at Arizona State. I don't know what he projects as a pro yet, but I liked what I saw in the 2 games that I watched at the end of last year. So I'm going to go a little bit chalky and boring, but I'm going to do a rematch, Arizona State over Iowa State in the Big 12 championship.
Yeah, I've got Texas Tech winning, but I do think it's going to be just like last year. There was 4 teams that finished 7-2, and just with the tiebreakers, it ended up being Iowa State and Arizona State. It could have been Colorado and BYU if just one other game was different. I do think Arizona State's going to be right there, and I do think Iowa State is going to be right there. And then the kind of another team that I think is going to be better than a lot of people think, and that is TCU. I think they might have a little bit to say. Even if they don't get there, they're going to have a say in who ends up being there.
Yeah, TCU I've seen as kind of a little bit of an underdog pick from a couple people. Obviously, I think Kansas State's the most popular pick for the Big 12 right now, but what Dillingham has going on at Arizona State, I just like it. So, and I seeing what they did to Iowa State last year and then what they were able to do against Texas. I mean, they had a real chance to win that game. I'm just kind of putting my faith in Arizona State again this year.
Yeah. All right. And then last but definitely not least, the SEC, I'm going to go with chalk here. They're the number 1 team in the AP poll, and that is Texas. If Arch Manning is half as good as everybody thinks he is, which I do think he is that good, they've got all the talent. Sark has turned that program around that just needed some tweaking. They've never been bad. It was interesting to hear that they have never been the preseason number 1. Did you hear that this week, Trev?
They've never been.
I mean, they've won national championship.
But they're an underdog in week 1, which makes sense. They're at Ohio State. I think Ohio State's only been an underdog at home one time in however many years it's been. But yeah, Texas is one of those programs that we think of throughout history as one of the best of all time, and they kind of are, but they don't have as many national titles as you would think, or number 1 rankings, or all these things. So, Texas is definitely going to be the most popular pick, especially if Arch lives up to the hype.
Yeah. And again, the team, they could play Alabama, they could play Georgia. They Ole Miss going to be as good as they've been. I mean, there's lots that are going to get into the playoff, and that's what we're going to talk about next. So, did you have Texas winning the SEC, or did you have somebody else?
No, I've got Alabama winning the SEC this year.
Okay. Yep. So yeah, you'll see Alabama's in my playoffs. So I mean, I'm not too far behind there, and I've got 2 others. But all right, let's go ahead now. So obviously, those 4 teams are automatically in the tournament. So do you want to? I think we should go the 1, 2, 3, 4 seed as we see it to start. Okay, is that how you think we should do this, Trev?
Yep, that sounds good. And I'll go first if you want.
Okay.
My number 1 seed is going to be Ohio State. I think they've got the 2 best players in the nation. Ryan Day winning the national title. I think he gets a little bit of a monkey off his back. Ohio State's a power anyway to begin with. So I'm going to go Ohio State 1 seed, 2 seed, SEC winner, Alabama. You could probably flip-flop these 2. I wouldn't be surprised if these were the 2 to win both the Big Ten and SEC if they flipped them. But I'm going to go Alabama 2 seed. 3 seed for me is going to be Clemson. And then the 4 seed for me was really tough because I think it's going to come down to whoever loses either the SEC or the Big Ten championship. And I'm going to go with the bigger brand in Arch Manning, and I'm going to give Texas the number 4 seed in my playoff.
Okay. Ours are pretty similar, just you're going to see, where I picked Texas. So I've got Ohio State as a 1 seed. And it would not shock me to see Texas go into Ohio State and win. But I still think Ohio State runs the table from there and still ends up being the 1 seed. Ohio State 1. I've got Texas 2. I've got Clemson 3. And then I have Penn State 4. I think Penn State beats, I'm pretty sure they play in the regular season. I have Penn State beating Ohio State in the regular season, but then Ohio State coming and beating Penn State. So that's why I don't think Penn State is going to drop very far.
Yeah, I definitely could see that. Penn State's they've got all the talent in the world. I mean, if they had Dabo Swinney or Nick Saban or Urban Meyer coaching the Penn State team, I think they're an easy pick to win it all. Yeah,
if Ryan Day was their coach, they would win it. Or the other thing, that team was wearing scarlet and gray. They are the number 1 team in the country, and it's not close. But people don't have any faith in James Franklin.
Yeah, he hasn't really proven it yet. I know they won 2 playoff games last year, but they beat SMU and Boise State. I mean, let's just be honest, those don't really count compared to Ohio State, Texas, Georgia, teams like that. So they've got all the talent. James Franklin is one of the best recruiters in all of college football. They've got NFL guys all over the roster.
Yep.
Best running back tandem in the league. They've brought in some new receivers. They've got defensive players. But I'm just going to stick with what I know with Ohio State. So, yeah, I got Ohio State 1, Bama 2, Clemson 3, Texas 4.
Okay. So you have the loser of the SEC as a 4 seed. I have the loser of the Big Ten. Definitely could be flipped. It will be one of those teams unless the Notre Dame is undefeated or a 1-loss, or somehow the only way it could be a little different is if Texas Tech or whoever wins the Big 12 is actually undefeated, like they are 13-0, they might be the 4 seed.
Yeah, I definitely can see that if they're undefeated. If they have a loss, I think we know ESPN's got a lot of pull on this. I think they're going to push for an SEC school.
Yep, I agree.
To get that final spot, if possible, right? If it's a Big Ten, ACC, and then SEC, of course, and then you got that final spot. If ESPN has the pull that I think they do, and it comes down to an SEC school, a Big Ten school, or Big 12, especially if it's Texas in this case with my bracket, I think they're just going to give it to them in Arch Manning.
Yeah, no surprise there. All right, let's go. Now let's kind of go by the games. So against the 4 seed, okay, will be the winner of the 5-12. Okay, so let's go with your 5 seed.
5 seed, since they just missed out, which is probably flip-flop of yours, is Penn State hosting a home game. They're the first seed that doesn't get the bye, so they'll get, in theory, get the easiest matchup.
Yep. And who do you have them playing as the 12 seed?
So this is going to be a new team to the playoff from last year. This is probably not the smartest pick. It's not the dumbest pick, but I'm betting on the coach, and they brought in some talent. I'm going UNLV with Dan Mullen.
So you think they are going to be the group of 5 team then?
The group of 5. Boise State's the smart pick. We all know that they're they have a history of that. I mean, Tulane, Memphis, Navy, or some other teams that people are talking about. But I like some stuff I'm hearing out of UNLV. Again, Dan Mullen's been around a long time, so this is kind of my one pick. If I miss, I'm not too upset about. But I wanted to have a couple new teams in there.
Okay, so my 5 is Georgia, the SEC. You know, like you said, we're just kind of switched there. So I've got Georgia at 5, and I have them playing the 12 seed Miami Hurricanes. So I do think the ACC is going to get 2 teams this year. There was a legit argument that Miami should have been in last year with the Heisman Trophy winner. Yes, they had a couple losses, and the Iowa State win against them in the bowl game is irrelevant. I believe Miami could have played in that playoff and been okay.
Yeah, definitely they could. Miami's really a sexy pick for a lot of people. They brought in Carson Beck from Georgia to be the quarterback this year. Obviously, they had Cam Moore the previous season. So Miami's a trendy pick. Like I said, I had Louisville in that ACC championship game.
So obviously, I had Miami playing Clemson in the championship game with Miami losing. So I have them still in the playoff. Probably, 11-2 would be my guess.
Yeah, so for me, it's Penn State versus UNLV. Kind of another year where Penn State gets to host a boring matchup. Last year they had SMU. You hate to see that in back-to-back years, but Penn State, I think, like I said, we had a flip-flop from Big Ten to SEC, but I think Penn State, they at least get the top home game since they were the first out of the byes.
Yep. All right. So now we're going to go to the 6-11 game that will play the Clemson. Okay, so 6. Who do you have at 6, Trev?
So at 6, I have Notre Dame. I think there's a real chance they could go undefeated, but since they're not in the conference, it's going to be tough for them to get a bye, obviously, which could happen, I guess. But since they're not in the conference, I think they get punished for that, and they do have to play the first weekend, even if they're undefeated.
Yep.
I am going to have Notre Dame, and this is one that I don't necessarily know if this team should be ranked this. They should maybe be a spot or 2 higher, but for TV ratings, bringing back the old ball coach, LSU.
Okay.
And Brian Kelly.
Yep. So I'm going to jump ahead here. I have the same matchup, just different seeds.
Okay.
So my 6-11 is Alabama versus Texas Tech. I do think the Big 12 I do think Texas Tech wins the Big 12, but I do think they have 2 or 3 losses, like last year's champion. So I just don't think they're going to be a high seed. Arizona State would have been the bottom seed or, the 11 seed last year if it would have went strictly by seeding wise. And I do think Texas Tech will fall victim to that this year. So I have Alabama versus Texas Tech.
Okay. I like that. Yeah, that'd be a tough road test for Tech to go into Alabama.
But that's what they're trying to – they are set – that's how the Big 12 and Texas Tech in particular, if they could get there, go into Alabama and beat them at their own game with money and just say, heck, we're going to outspend you. We're going to get better players than you, and we're going to go beat you. But that's what the Big 12 and Texas Tech and that booster want to do, and they're going to have that opportunity.
Yeah, if it plays out in your scenario and it's that matchup and Texas Tech does go into Alabama and win, that gives the Big 12 even more credibility moving forward, just like Arizona State's performance did last season. So that's kind of what they need. They need some opportunities to prove themselves because we know it's SEC and Big Ten dominant.
Yep. All right, 7-10. They will go play Texas in my thing. So 7-10 will go play the 2. So who's your 7 seed?
Okay, so my 7-10 will play Alabama because I had Alabama winning the SECs by 2 seed. And I've got Georgia hosting Oregon.
Okay. Yeah, so we're not a whole lot off. Our seeds are, but that is, I promise you, neither one of us are going to get this bracket right because just the way it all works out. I've got Oregon against Boise State as my group of 5. I think they've got one loss. They're still ranked ahead of Texas Tech, and probably ahead of Miami as well, because Miami would have just lost, so that would have dropped them a little bit. So I've got Boise as my group of 5 representative playing Oregon, which Oregon is going to be thank you. Now, the problem is Boise State and Oregon's not going to have a huge advantage for travel or anything else like that, with Boise being right there. But Oregon will get a home game and have a favorable matchup, unlike last year in the playoff.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Oregon gets a home game there. Boise State is probably the smartest pick. It's probably who I should have gone with from the group of 5, to be honest. Yeah, it's not a massive home field advantage as far as travel, but as we all know, Eugene, Oregon is probably one of the top 5 or 6, 7 toughest places to play in the country. So it'd be a tough test for Boise State. I don't mind that one at all. I think I'm just a touchdown on Oregon this year because they don't have that very many returning starters, even though they're going to be just fine. I mean, if they weren't to get 10 wins, I'd be a little bit surprised with the program that they're building there. But I'm just a touchdown on Oregon this year, but not by much.
Right, and I am too, and that's why they're a 7 seed. I don't have them going very far in this tournament, but they're still Oregon. They're still going to be really good, and I do think last year stung them. So I do think they're going to step up a little bit and win, get back there. And again, the SEC and the Big Ten, you just got to finish in the top 3, and you're guaranteed maybe even 4, almost a guarantee in the playoff.
Yeah, Big Ten and SEC top 3 for both, I think, are basically guaranteed unless it's some weird scenario. And almost, given the money of the conferences, just about top 4 gives you a real fighting chance. So I've got Oregon as a 10 seed. You've got them as a 7, so we're not far off on that one.
Nope. All right, and then your 8-9 matchup, which will play your top seed, Ohio State.
8-9, this one, I think the committee will give a little bit of a break to the Big 12 champion because they're probably not going to give the Big 12 champion one of the byes. So they will allow the Big 12 champ to host a home playoff game. So Arizona State is going to be hosting I've got 4 new teams compared to last year. UNLV, LSU, and Alabama, of course, that we've already spoke about. And this will be my final new team. It's a team that grosses me out to put in, disgusting. People that graduate there aren't even fans of the football team. Nobody watches them. But they had a good record last year. They returned a ton of starters. They have a good proven coach, and their schedule is favorable, and that's Illinois.
So you think they do turn it around, and they're close in my book. They did not make it here. I kind of already said my matchup where I have the same matchup as you. My 8-9 is LSU and Notre Dame. I do think if this matchup is possible, TV networks, ESPN will set this up in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I've got Notre Dame, LSU, just like you do. We just have different seeds, but So I've got I'd call it 2 big games and then 2 kind of the boring ones, which kind of happened last year. So I've got Notre Dame, LSU, and Georgia, Oregon. Those will be the high-rated ones.
Right.
And then my 2 lower-rated ones, of course, will be Penn State, UNLV. That'll be the lowest-rated one most likely. And then Arizona State hosting Illinois. Again, like I said, people that graduate from Illinois don't even like the football team. But that's their schedule on paper is so easy. They went 10-3 last year, returned a ton of starters, quarterback. It grosses me out to put them in there. It's not fun at all. I wanted to put Iowa or even Nebraska would have been better to put in there than Illinois. But that's one of my new 4 teams.
Yeah. And, LSU and Notre Dame, obviously with the 8-9 matchup, you could put them, would they put that at Notre Dame to get Brian Kelly back at Notre Dame? I have them as the 9 seed, LSU as the 8. So in my scenario, it would be in Death Valley, but I could definitely see them switching that around. So Brian Kelly has to go back to Touchdown Jesus.
I think that the committee would set it up so he has to go back to Notre Dame. I feel like that would just get a touch extra rating, him going back to South Bend.
Right. And then also just bringing a team from the South up to the North to play.
And that's partially why I have that matchup, because I want to see an SEC school go up north and hopefully it's snowing and, see how they compete.
Yeah, hopefully it's like the Notre Dame Indiana game. That was that the snow game? Yeah, that was the snow game last year.
Yeah, it was cold, and LSU would probably give Notre Dame much more of a better matchup than Indiana did, of course. But I just want to see an SEC school go to Notre Dame or some of these other northern schools just to see how they fare.
Yeah, unfortunately, like for me, I've got Penn State and Ohio State, other northern schools getting buys. That's what, like, if you're Ohio State and you go win, you just never get that reward. They did last year, and they didn't have as great a season as they would have liked, but it obviously ended up working out. They won the national championship, but they don't want to be the 8 seed anymore.
And the reason that I gave, if you look at the teams that are hosting a home playoff game for me, there's a Big Ten team and an SEC team, which I think the TV networks are going to try to make sure that happens, right, for extra money coming to those conferences. Notre Dame, I think, is kind of a lock for a home game if they go undefeated. Maybe one loss, that's a little bit different story. And then, like I said, Arizona State, or I should say the winner of the Big 12 is kind of a wild card. It'll depend on their record, who it is, if they get a home game or not, or if they make them go on the road. But I think for sure the committee is going to make sure a Big Ten team and an SEC school host a first-round game.
Yeah, and if you look at mine, I've got Georgia hosting, I've got Alabama hosting, Oregon, and LSU. So, I've got 3 SEC teams hosting and then a Big Ten. So, I'm right.
Would be happy with that.
Yep. And yeah. So, all right, let's go. So Ohio State playing in mine. They're playing Notre Dame. I've got Ohio State winning that game. And how about your 1 seed playing your 8-9 game?
So I've got Arizona beating Illinois to move on to play my 1 seed as well, Ohio State, and I've got Ohio State beating Arizona State to move on to the Final Four.
Yep. Okay. And then my 7-10, I've got Oregon over Boise State. And then obviously going to play Texas, and I've got Texas winning that.
For my 7-10, I've got Georgia beating Oregon, and then I've got the all-fun SEC matchup, number 2 Alabama versus number 7 Georgia to go to the Final Four.
Yeah, and what are the ratings going to be on that? Every college football fan in the entire country will watch that game.
For sure, especially the South. There's not going to be one TV that's not turned on to that one in the Southeast.
Yep. All right, and then 6-11 Alabama Texas Tech. I've got Texas Tech pulling the upset there. And this is Big 12 bias. Big 12 bias. This is what the Big 12 has to do to get that second team in or get that respect to get a bye if they are, undefeated or 1 loss. If there are 2 or 3 losses, you can't argue that they should be the top 4. But if you are undefeated or 1 loss, yes, we are one of the best conferences in the country. And then also maybe that second team, if the Big 12 team can make a run, win a game on the road, get that second team in the future. And then so they're playing Clemson, and then obviously I have Clemson going as well. So pretty much chalk so far for me. My 1, 2, and 3 seeds are still playing.
My 6-11, obviously I got Notre Dame hosting LSU. I'm going to have Notre Dame winning that game, actually. I really like what Notre Dame's building. They've got a ton of talent on that team. And I think LSU coming up there in the cold is going to have a little bit of a factor to it. So I've got Notre Dame beating LSU to go play Clemson.
Okay. And then who do you have winning that one, Clemson or Notre Dame?
I've got Clemson. And I don't know if I said earlier, but the bottom half of my bracket, I've got Clemson beating Notre Dame, and I've got Alabama beating Georgia. So it'd be Clemson versus Alabama to go the title.
Yep. Okay. And then 5-12, Georgia, Miami for me. I've got Georgia winning, going on to play Penn State. And James Franklin tears continue. Georgia goes and beats Penn State to get to the Final Four.
So for my 4, I've got obviously I've got Penn State beating UNLV at home, and then Penn State will go play Texas in a 4-5 matchup. And I'm going to give James Franklin his first big top 5 victory of his career. Arch Manning doesn't have a ton of starts. I love their defense, but they are replacing 4 offensive linemen at Texas. and this is going to be the first big win, true big win of James Franklin's career. So I've got Penn State beating Texas. So my Final Four is Ohio State versus Penn State to go to the title. And on the lower half of the bracket, I've got Clemson versus Alabama to go to the title game.
Okay. All right. So my Final Four is Ohio State versus Texas. So a rematch of game 1. And then I've got Clemson versus Georgia, which those two teams are close, like 100 miles apart from each other, maybe 200, because Clemson's right on the Georgia border. I'm pretty sure it's real close. So that's my Final Four. So Big Ten, SEC, and then the next really closest program to an SEC program is Clemson. Yes, they are the ACC, but they are much more ran like a SEC program than an ACC program. And they've got national championships to prove it.
Yeah, they almost feel like an SEC school. If the ACC was to ever break up, which potentially could happen here in the future, Clemson just feels like a natural fit in the SEC.
Yep. Yeah. South Carolina, the Gamecocks do not want them in the SEC, but everybody else does.
Yeah, that's for sure. So I'll go first. I'll let you have the final say here because you're the college football guy. So for my national title, Penn State has that big, huge win over Texas, surprises everybody. A lot of talk, does Ken Manning win the big game, all this stuff. James Franklin finally wins a big one. And then Ohio State knocks off again. I've got Ohio State beating Penn State to go to the national title game. And then on the lower end, I'm going to go with Clemson knocking off Alabama. So I'm going to have Ohio State number 1 seed versus Clemson number 3 seed for the national title game.
All right. So I've got Ohio State playing Texas, and I have Texas winning that one. So I got the, well, that actually doesn't even work. Sorry. It'd be 1. Sorry, I said that wrong. Ohio State would play Georgia. Okay. And then I've got Ohio State winning that game. That's my fault. I did that wrong. So yeah. So
you've got Ohio State going to the title game as well?
Yep. Ohio State beats number 5 Georgia to get to the final game there. And then Texas versus Clemson. And then I've got Texas. So I'm going to have a rematch, game 1 and then last game. Because I do think those definitely, I mean, injuries happen, things happen, but if you just stack up roster to roster, Penn State might have something to say about that, but I think Ohio State and Texas have 2 of the top 3 rosters in all of college football.
And I'm going to go with my champion. I'm going to probably go with, can't really call him underrated. That doesn't even make sense, but I'm going to have Clemson beating Ohio State for the national title. Cade Klubnik, I think he threw close to 40 touchdowns last year with only 6 or 8 picks, whatever it was. Returning all the offensive linemen, a couple of good receivers. They're going to have multiple first-round picks on the defensive side for Clemson, and Dabo Swinney is a proven national championship coach. Right. So that's why I've got Clemson moving on. I'm probably going to bet Clemson to win the national title. I'm going to probably bet Cade Klubnik to win the Heisman. I think he's at 9-1 right now. I know Arch is 6-1, but I'm going to go with Cade, and I'm going to have Clemson beating Ohio State for the national title.
And I've got Texas beating Ohio State for the national championship. Arch does it. He does something his brother or his uncle, his dad, and his grandfather all could not do, and that's win a national championship for the SEC, like his family with Texas moving there. That does pain me a little bit, just seeing Texas leave the conference, then go win a national championship. But they had started to make that transition to be better the last few years. The last year, the Big 12, they were the best team, and it wasn't close. They had already kind of made that transition. Last year, first year in the SEC, won one playoff game, beat Arizona State. And this is just the next step. Sark has won a national title with Alabama, I believe, as an assistant. And he was really good at USC. He was really good at Washington, just ran into some personal stuff, but I think he has that all figured out. And he's got Texas. They're gonna compete right there with Georgia, Alabama, LSU, as the top 4 teams in the SEC, I think.
No, they should probably have the best defense in the country at Texas this year. Arch Manning is he's a mobile quarterback, unlike the rest of his family. Or I should say, not like the rest, but compared to Eli and Peyton, I should say.
His grandpa could run.
His grandpa could run. They've got to replace the O-line, which maybe that's not as big of a concern as I'm making it out to be. But I'm just going with proven coaches, I guess.
Yep.
Sark and Ryan Day now, and with Ohio State probably having the 2 best players in college football, and then Clemson potentially having the best quarterback this coming year. And Dabo's a proven two-time champion, right? I believe at Clemson, one with Lawrence and one with Deshaun. So that's going to be my matchup. I really like what Clemson's got going on. They've got a ton of first round and second round NFL players, which is no surprise. But they had a little 3 or 4 year down period, if you want to call it that. And I think they're back on track now. They made the playoff last year. They return a bunch of starters. So Clemson versus Ohio State for me. And I'd love to see Penn State get there because I like a lot of players on their team. You know, James Franklin's not my favorite guy, of course, but I would like to see Penn State in the national title game. It's just until Franklin can prove to me that he can win multiple big games, I just don't know if I can trust him. And in my bracket, I did have him upsetting Texas, you know, the young, inexperienced quarterback in Arch Manning. But ultimately, I think they get knocked off by somebody before the title game.
Yeah, I agree. And we're not that different. You know, I got Clemson in the Final Four. Georgia's going to have something to say about it. Penn State's going to have something to say about it. It'll be interesting if we ever get, you know, the Cinderella team to win 2 games. That's the issue with football. I think, you know, Boise State could go beat one of these teams. That wouldn't, or whoever that group of 5 team is, in one game. But then they got to come back a week later and play another really good team. That's where I don't know if those teams are ever going to have that chance. Or a team like Texas Tech. Not that they don't have the talent. I think they actually do have the talent. But if the scenario would happen in my bracket, they went to Alabama and beat them in the playoff. Can you imagine what the ESPN would do to Lubbock that week? They would every TV show, every personality that ESPN would send them all there, and they wouldn't even be able to practice football because McAfee and Stephen A. Smith would just live there for the week and hype them up so much.
Yeah, Patrick Mahomes old school and all the money that Texas Tech has. Yeah, Texas Tech, my team that I have in Arizona State, you wonder if a team like that, can they win 1 game? Sure. The real question, like you said, is can they win 2 or more? Until we see it, you know, we don't know, obviously. But with the changing landscape of college football, the usual suspects are still there at the top. But I think some new teams are going to kind of emerge depending where the money's at. And Texas Tech is one that you have in that has spent a ton of money, and it doesn't sound like that money is going anywhere. So Texas Tech, if all this transfer works and the money continues, they could become a maybe not a power, but a semi-power potentially.
Right. They'll just be a thorn in their side because, you know, say a kid wants to go to Alabama or wants to go to Georgia or LSU, or it doesn't matter, Ohio State, and they offer him $2 million a year. Well, that guy from Texas Tech, well, come here and I'll give you 3. I mean, that's literally what he's doing. And I know they say it's going to that limit is coming. I don't see how that works. I still think there's going to be ways around that, and there always has been, and there always will be. That if someone wants to pay a kid more money to come to Lubbock, Texas, than to go to Alabama, if the money talks, and I can't blame the kids. You know, someone wants to offer me $1 million more a year to go somewhere else, I'll probably go.
Absolutely, especially if you don't know what your NFL future looks like as a prospect. I mean, that $1 million or whatever amount of money it could be, that's just a big head start in life, like we've talked about many times on here.
Yep. Yeah, that's what. Actually, I was just talking to Trey Swartz's stepdad today, and he plays at Troy. He's been a tight end, been a backup. And he didn't say what he get, but he gets some NIL money. I'm not going to. I'm not even going to say a number because I have no idea what it is. But he has one more year left. His goal is to try to have as good a season as he can. I think he said he caught a couple touchdown passes, and they're targeting him a little bit more in the scrimmages so far this fall. He would like to go to a big-time program next year and play or not play. It doesn't matter. But those teams, even for people that aren't going to be a starter or whatever, will pay you $100,000 to $200,000 to be on your team. And if you don't play, great. I mean, your body's not getting killed it does during the week and everything. You got to put in the work for that. But if you get $100,000, that's a heck of a start in life.
Yeah, even if you're not going to go to the NFL or even start or play a lot there at that college, you're going to. And another thing too, besides the money, like you mentioned, a lot of connections you'll meet at these big universities, friends. This is stuff that you got to think long term. I mean, the teammates that he has, if he was to go to a big school, he might have some really good friends that go on to do big and better things that maybe he'll have an advantage that he could reach out to them moving forward throughout his life. And that's the beautiful thing about college sports. It's all who you know a lot of times. So going to a bigger program, it just opens you up to more opportunities.
Yeah, I mean it's just one of those. He started here. He loved basketball, but he recognized that football was his ticket. He went to Iowa Western for a few years, and he's been at Troy a couple of years. And if he can make one more step up for a little bit more money, and if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. He could stay right there at Troy and get what he's getting now, and that's not going to hurt anything. But if he thinks he can get more, then good for him. And that's the good side of the NIL. It's not the outbidding a guy $1.9 million to $2.4 million. It's a regular guy getting $20,000 plus college paid for. So when he graduates from college, he can put a down payment on a house, or, maybe if he did really well, he could go buy a house with that money and not have any debt from a house and just start his life off great. Or, maybe you do still get a house payment and stuff, but you put that money in an IRA or whatever and never touch it. And then when you retire, that $100,000 is now $4 million or whatever, and you can retire a little bit earlier and retire really comfortably. It's just however you want to do it, but it's just a great head start. We've talked about it many, many times, and I hope, and I really do believe this, most college football players are using this money the way it's supposed to be used, and helping their family and helping themselves get a great start in life. That's the great side of the NIL. There are a lot of downsides, and we talk about that, but there are some real positives.
Absolutely. It's a head start in life, like you mentioned, and a lot of these college programs, we've talked about this many times, are bringing in former NFL guys, GMs, or people that have been in the programs to obviously help with the money and then also guide these kids. Hey, here's a good agent or agency that you should deal with when you're looking to go to the NFL or whatever it may be. Also, here's a list of people maybe to stay away from. The guys that are going to try to screw you over and take your money, do things that they shouldn't, which are some of the bad sides of all this. But I think getting more and more NFL guys into college is going to help guide these younger players to make correct decisions.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. So that's really all we're going to talk about college football today. Like I said earlier, we're going to go game by game for Iowa and Iowa State and maybe a few other local schools around next week. But I know Trev's got a few NFL topics. I know one of them is Shedeur Sanders and his. But before we get to that, I do want to say one thing here. And I don't know if you saw this today, but the Minnesota Twins are no longer for sale. The Pohlads are going to keep the team, and the Twins are going to continue suck for many years to come.
I did hear that when I was driving today. I'm staying in Pasadena, California tonight, so I did hear that.
Can you see the Rose Bowl or not?
No, I'm not that close. I'm just a little outside of Pasadena, but it's that general area. But I did hear something about that, and then the Trailblazers too for NBA sold or something, but they're not going to move. I mean, these are a couple stories I didn't even really know about, but these teams are either selling or potentially selling for billions of dollars. So It is a pretty big deal.
It's a huge deal. I think the owner of the Carolina Hurricanes bought the Trailblazers, so he's just adding to his professional sports portfolio. Interesting to see what happened with the poll ads, whether they didn't get enough money or they decided to keep it for a few more years because they understand how much more money these teams are selling for every year. They've owned the team for 40-some years, maybe even 50 years. Sometime in the 80s is when they bought the team. And it's just frustrating because they are very, very cheap. Minneapolis isn't a huge market, but it's also not a small market. Minneapolis-St. Paul is one of the bigger metropolitan areas in this country. And they just haven't – they've got a beautiful ballpark. They've got lots of resources. Minneapolis has, their baseball field's really good. U.S. Bank Stadium is state-of-the-art. It's just too bad. I'm not a huge Minnesota fan of anything but the Twins, but it's just too bad that they have not invested in the team. They use it to make money, where a lot of these owners now, as long as they're not losing a lot of money, all these people have made money in other ways. They don't need these teams to make money for them.
The best thing you can invest in nowadays is a professional sports franchise of any of the leagues, because they all make money. The things that still sell on TV are tick. So, yeah, that's it's still a little bit unfortunate. You've got some old school owners out there still in all the sports leagues that really aren't willing. Yeah, it sounds like the Twins are going to go through some of their same struggles again moving forward. But it's not like it was in the 80s. Made all these leagues.
Yeah, it's the only good thing about it. The Twins traded 10 of the 26 players on the roster at the trade deadline, but they do have the new minor league report came out, and they do have the number 2 ranked minor league system now because they traded all their major leaguers and got a whole bunch of minor leaguers in return. So, but all right, so let's go back to the NFL. There, I just wanted a little, kind of pit stop there with Major League Baseball real quick. Shedeur Sanders started for the Browns, looked pretty good. Now, preseason games, so you always want to preface that, but you want to look good because, you say, well, it's not against regular teams, but you sure don't want to look bad, and he didn't look bad.
No, Shedeur, I'd give him a B probably rating of how he played. A lot of the stuff that I saw in college is what I saw in the first preseason game. He stands in the pocket tough. He makes good decisions when he decides to throw the ball. He usually goes to the right area. He doesn't turn the ball over a lot. There were one play that I really liked. You probably saw the highlight where he scrambled out to his right, threw the ball down the field, and that guy made the extended one-handed catch. What I really liked on that play, though, is Shedeur, he stood in the pocket, and then he left when he had no choice. He didn't just leave early. A lot of young quarterbacks love to leave the pocket early for no reason, just because they're nervous. Shedeur sat there until it was time to leave. He made the right read and a good throw. I was impressed with that. A couple things that I didn't like, and we talked about this when Shedeur was still playing at Colorado a couple times on here. When he gets sacked, he holds the ball out with his right arm and hand with only one hand on the football. That happened once in the game. They blew the whistle early. I don't think he got taken to the ground because it's preseason. But in a regular season game, that ball is getting stripped and probably taken the other way. You can't hold the ball with one hand in the NFL. Even the bigger quarterbacks and the stronger quarterbacks, sometimes they get taken down with 2 hands on the ball, and it still comes loose. So holding the ball out there with one hand, that can't continue. That's going to result in a really negative play. He had that 4th and 2, I think it was, on the second drive, where he scrambled back about 15, 20 yards, and he was able to get the pass off. Against the starting NFL defenses, that might not happen. Again, he's a decent athlete. My comparison for him coming out was a mix of Jared Goff and Tyrod Taylor, which I still kind of stand by. He's a decent athlete. He's going to have to be accurate like Jared Goff. He's a better athlete than Jared Goff is, obviously, but he's really going to have to own the game before the ball is snapped. He's not an athlete like Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson. He's not going to be able to run around and make a bunch of plays necessarily. So basically what I saw in college is what I saw in the first preseason game. A couple of things that worried me a little bit, and I don't know if it's going to matter or not, but there's a couple drives that ended where they had to punt. and right after the third down play, he would take his helmet off on the field. You're not going to be able to do that. And there was once where I saw him yelling at somebody down the field, and I couldn't see from the camera, so I don't know. I don't know if he was yelling at the ref that maybe there was a holding, or I don't know if he was yelling at one of his receivers that maybe he thought didn't make the right play or the right cut. The only thing I would say at that is that's not a problem if he's correct. Peyton Manning and Tom Brady are notorious for yelling at guys. My only thing is if you're a rookie, if you're going to yell at veteran players, you just better be correct if you're yelling at them. You better be sure that they made a mistake and you didn't.
Yeah, it's you're the quarterback, so you are a leader. You don't have to be the leader, but you are a leader of the team. But yeah, you can't be berating even officials or anything, because guess what? You're going to see those guys on Sunday when it's live fire, and you want them to give you the benefit of the doubt. You don't want to make them turn on you in the preseason before you've ever played a real game and say, hey, this kid is already thinks he's better than us or is going to show us up.
Yeah, and then a couple times he went to the sideline after the drive was over, and he walked by his coaches, but then the camera would cut away. So I don't have enough video evidence to really make a strong decision if he was ignoring him. It looked like he was talking to him when he was sitting on the bench, but again, he's not with his dad anymore, so that's something to pay attention to. He's going to have to mature a little bit, but everything that I saw at Colorado, I mean, he's a good enough athlete and a good enough passer that I think he can be a starter in the league. Now, how good of a starter, I don't know. That's what we're going to find out. And, of course, news came out today around lunchtime out here anyway that he's probably going to miss this weekend's preseason game with an injury. So that kind of sucks for him because really all he needed to do was, first of all, make the team, which he was probably going to do anyway because he was an owner's pick like most of us think, even though the owner denied that. And then the second step was just be the best rookie on the team. And through the first preseason game, he definitely was. Now it sounds like he's not going to play. So for him, he's probably, he would never say this, but hoping that Dylan Gabriel doesn't perform well.
Right.
And then he can move ahead of him. Because regardless, though, Shedeur Sanders is going to play this year. It just depends on how many games. Are they going to give Flacco and Pickett 10 games and then give Shedeur and Gabriel the next 7, or how's it going to work? But they're most likely not going to be very good. So we're probably going to see all 4 quarterbacks play this year. And I definitely want to see Shedeur play 4 or 5 games. I definitely want to see Dylan Gabriel play at least 2 or 3, depending on how Shedeur plays, assuming he finishes ahead of him on the depth chart. So he did everything he needed to through that first game. It just kind of sucks now that he's got the injury, but there's still a little time to go.
All right. And then speaking of injuries, Stafford, questions, and it may not be good.
Definitely not. The Rams were a popular pick and one of my picks probably to go to the Super Bowl out of the NFC. That's not going to be the case now for me, at least at this moment. Back injuries are weird. You can feel good one night or one day, and then the next day it changes. So he's an old beat-up quarterback to begin with. It really hampers their chances of making the playoffs, even with Jimmy G as a backup. I don't know if Jimmy G has much left in the tank. He didn't look like it with the Raiders. Now, that was a bad franchise with bad coaching. Maybe going to Sean McVay will change that. I think big picture, if Stafford can't play a lot, obviously they're not a Super Bowl contender in my opinion.
Right.
But if Sean McVay thinks they could contend, people are wondering, could Kirk Cousins get traded? Maybe that could be a landing spot if they think Stafford's going to miss significant time. And again, the Rams wouldn't have to give up any top draft picks. They could give up a low draft pick and then work with the Falcons to see what kind of contract that they could end up paying.
Might not even have to give up. I mean, I don't know how this really works. They might not give up any picks if they're just willing to pay the guy.
Yeah, it depends on their cap situation, but
right.
Kirk Cousins is a name that's going to come up. If Sean McVay thinks that Stafford might only miss 3, 4, 5 games, right, maybe they need a veteran presence like a Kirk Cousins. Maybe that's a place he could end up. But, the Rams I was strongly considering the Rams to be my NFC pick in the Super Bowl. But as of right now, I'm really worried because, again, backs are weird. Anybody that's had a back injury, and we're not professional athletes, of course, but it doesn't really – back injuries are just weird. They can linger for a week or two, or they can linger for the entire season for him as a quarterback. So it's a real concern.
Yeah. All right, and now kind of your over-under on wins for a couple teams here.
Just one team for tonight.
One team. Okay. Yeah.
I already bet this
one team. Sorry, I read that wrong. Yep.
No,
one
that's fine.
team.
I already bet this team's over under win total. Is a team I was kind of ignoring, and it's just based on one player. He's had success everywhere he's been, put up good numbers, and he's had to go to several different places, and that's Cam Ward and the Titans. Their over under win total is 5.5. I already bet that at minus 135. I'm thinking about doing the teaser bet of 6.5 at plus 125. Betting that, I haven't done it yet. But if you look at Cam Ward, most people don't know he started at Inkernet Ward down in Texas.
Yep.
Then had to go up to Washington State, then to Miami, and he put up good numbers everywhere he's been. And if you look throughout the history of the NFL, I would say more, if you look at the good to great quarterbacks throughout history, most of them either went to smaller programs or dealt with that adversity in college. Not all, of course. Some went to big-time programs and they just succeeded. But a lot of guys, I mean, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen went to Wyoming, Brett Favre, Southern Mississippi, even a guy like Tony Romo, who I really like, not that he's a Hall of Fame or anything, Eastern Illinois, I think Joe Burrow started at Ohio State and had to transfer to TU. Jalen Hurts started at Bama and had to transfer to Oklahoma. They had to go through some adversity, right? And then look at their teams to the playoffs this past year in the NFL with Jaden Daniels at Arizona State, transferring to LSU, Bo Nix starting at Auburn, going to Oregon. So something about Cam Ward's journey of 3 different colleges, and they should have a pretty decent offensive line. Again, that's probably one of the worst divisions in all of the NFL. So I do like their over of 5.5.
Yeah, and everything you've heard is he is in there working as much as he can. They have to kick him out. You know, that I think that is some coach speak, but he's humble. You don't hear anything about him. Like, you don't hear anything, good, bad, indifferent. So I take that as good. He's going to show up. He's going to do his job. He knows he's a rookie. He knows he's the number 1 pick. He knows the team's not been great, and it's his job to turn it around.
Yeah, when you hear him speak, he sounds like he's been in the league for 10 years. So just everywhere he goes, he succeeds. And again, that division, obviously, until proven otherwise, the Texans are head coach and quarterback are the most proven, but they are rebuilding their O-line and receiving room all in the offseason. So maybe they take
the receiver should be fine. They got a whole bunch of Cyclones, but yeah,
should be fine. I did have that written down here as our final topic, and we'll move into that now. Some rookies that are doing well.
Sorry, before you move on, I do want to talk about Cam Ward one thing, and I know I talked about this after the bowl game. He is one big human being, and that's why when I was down there for that bowl game, and I think we were like in the 6th row, and I was just amazed at how big he was, and he was as big as his lineman. You know, not obviously he wasn't 300 pounds, but he was just as tall, big, thick. Huge legs. I mean, he looks like an NFL quarterback.
He looks the part. I told you I thought he looked like Steve McNair. I was trying to find.
I agree. I 100% agree in that he is one big human being.
Yeah. So I mean, they probably had the worst quarterback play of any NFL team last year. That first week at Chicago, they should have won that game, and Will Levis gave it away. Will Levis gave away a few games, and his coach Callahan actually called him out in the post-game press conferences, which usually doesn't happen between a head coach and a quarterback, and he did it multiple times. So I think just by Cam Ward being there, I really like the over-under. I like the over of 5.5. Now, I'm not ready to say they're a playoff team by any means, but I do like their over of 5.5 wins, and I might do the teaser one of 6.5.
Yeah, I agree. I wanted to interject that just one more time, how big he is. All right, and then your last thing with the rookies.
Some rookies that are standing out. Our buddy Owen texted me last night. He's got a dynasty draft, so they had to draft rookies. He's like, give me a list of some sleepers. So I sent a list of kind of some sort of big names and some sleepers that are standing out. Dante Thornton Jr. for the Raiders, receiver out of Tennessee. He's 6'5", ran a 4.340 at the combine. Only Randy Moss and Calvin Johnson have ever done that. He's already listed as a starter, and he's making acrobatic catches in camp. He had one in the preseason game. So look for him as a big-time receiver. He might be a boomer bust guy. Again, I'm not saying he's going to be Moss or or Megatron. Those are two of the 4 best receivers of all time, in my opinion. But the measurables are there, the speed. And like I said, he's already listed as a starter. So if you're a fantasy person, if you have a deep bench or you're in a dynasty league, look for him maybe to take a flyer on, or even maybe an earlier pick. Isaac Tesla for the Lions, rookie receiver out of Arkansas. It's kind of the same thing, not size-wise as much or speed, but he's making acrobatic catches throughout camp. There's some people thinking that he can push Tim Patrick for that number 3 wide receiver spot. Of course, with the Lions, they've got St. Brown and Williams. Those are for sure. They're going to be their 1 and 2. With Tim Patrick having an injury history, I think Isaac Tesla for the Lions is a guy you can take a flyer on. He's really turning some heads with Detroit. And a couple other guys, Mason Taylor, tight end with the Jets, obviously related to Jason Taylor and Zach Thomas. He's got the bloodlines or the genes. Yeah. Yes, I don't know if we're allowed to say genes. Apparently American Eagle and genes. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if we're going to get canceled for saying that, but he's got the genes, the football genes in his family. He's out of LSU, 6'5", 255 tight end. He's listed as a Jet starter right now. So if you need a flyer on a tight end, if you're not going to get any of the big starters and you're looking for a bench guy that maybe could pop, I'd look at Mason Taylor with the Jets. And then, of course, we're going to end with an Iowa State guy since you're an Iowa State fan. That's Jaden Higgins. He's already listed as a starter for the Texans. As you mentioned, they drafted 2 Iowa State receivers. They've got 3 on the roster. Jaden Higgins is listed as a starter, which is no surprise. Anytime you're a first or second round pick, you're either expected to start or contribute right away in most cases.
Yeah, he was drafted in the second round, but got a guaranteed contract, which it was the first for a receiver or one of the very first guaranteed contracts as a second rounder. They knew what they had right away, and they knew they wanted him. And it would have been one of those, you want him to start. First 3 rounds, I think you really expect those guys to come in and start. If they don't start, play a lot. And then after that, you're just kind of hoping they make the team and make your team better. But top, 2-3 rounds, you want them starting / playing a lot.
Yeah, their GM came and talked about that fully guaranteed contract because it threw people off. And he basically said with inflation and the rookie pay scale, it was a difference of like 3 to 4%. And his theory was, instead of us arguing about 3 or 4% and him missing time in camp, let's just guarantee it and let's get him in the door right away. Now, when you get later in the second round and third and on, that's a little bit different story. But he was talking about the slot that he was drafted, inflation, the rookie pay scale, all that stuff. It was a minor difference. He's like, let's just guarantee it and get the guy in here and let's get going.
All right. Thanks, Trev. We're a little bit over an hour, and, that's kind of be the, we always try to keep it a little less than an hour, but now we're in football season. Next week, we will be days away. So probably a little more than an hour each week. And again, as we said, we are going to game by game predict the Iowa State football seasons and see where we end up. Obviously, we did our playoff tonight. Neither one of us have either team in the playoffs, but Trevor did say that he has Iowa State in the championship game. So let's see what record they're going to have and who he has them losing to before the championship game. Thanks a lot, Trev. Anything else you want to add?
Nope. Just we're probably going to be over an hour the next 3 episodes, I would assume, because it's the preview of football. We got a lot of predictions to do, but thanks for everybody for listening. And this is the best time of the year right now.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks a lot, Trev, and we'll talk next week.
All righty. Have a good one.